You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, and you're not. I've got to start this show off by breaking down a signing that I missed. I have absolutely no idea how I missed this, but I did. Shams Charania had tweeted this at 9:30 in the morning on Thursday. I didn't talk about this on Thursday. I didn't talk about it on Friday. The only way that I found out about it was because I was hanging out with my buddy Jim, and he asked me about this signing. And it's like, Jim, what are you talking about? He said someone signed a 4-year extension worth over $96 million in the NBA. I said, no, they didn't. If someone had signed that contract, I would have heard about it. Then I went on hoopsrumors.com, and sure enough, he was right. I'm talking, of course, about Terry Rozier signing a 4-year extension with the Hornets worth about $96,260,000. When you first hear about this extension, you may scratch your head a little bit. Is Terry Rozier really worth over $24 million a year? It's harder to answer that question, though, than you might think. Since leaving the Celtics and getting a chance to strut his stuff with the Hornets, Rozier has been, if not great, really, really good. Last year, he put up 20.4 points per game, 4.4 rebounds per game, and 4.2 assists per game. He shot 45% from the field, 38.9% from beyond the arc. He's turned into a key piece for the Hornets. I mean, Rozier was the leading scorer for a Hornets team that made the play-in tournament. Yes, they got annihilated by the Pacers, 144-117. But the point is that the Hornets actually got into the play-in tournament. The first time since the 15-16 season that they've even sniffed the playoffs. Also, the Hornets just lost Devontae Graham. He went to the Pelicans. If you're the Hornets, you have this really good point guard set to hit free agency soon. I'm sure you want to lock him up now, so that way he doesn't leave like other Hornets point guards have. Cough, cough, Kemba Walker. Cough, cough, Devontae Graham. I mean, here's another thing. If Rozier was to hit free agency after this coming season, and he has another really good year where he leads the Hornets in scoring, he'd get a big deal in free agency. A bunch of point guard needy teams would line up to sign Rozier. and give him a huge contract. I promise you, Terry Rozier would have gotten at least $100 million if he had hit free agency after this coming season. This extension sets the Hornets up really well for the future. You've got Rozier locked up long term. You've got Gordon Hayward locked up long term. You've got LaMelo Ball under team control for a long time. You also have guys like PJ Washington and Miles Bridges under control for a long time. That's a starting lineup that I don't want to say is going to win an NBA title, because it's not. But is it inconceivable that they could make some noise in the playoffs? If LaMelo hits his ceiling, if Gordon Hayward stays healthy, is it crazy to say that that team could win a round in the playoffs? I don't think so. If everything goes the Hornets' way, it's very conceivable to me that they can make a little bit of noise in the playoffs. I mean, it's kind of funny. Go back to the 2019 offseason, where the Celtics and Hornets, in essence, trade point guards. The Celtics get Kemba Walker, the Hornets get Terry Rozier. Everyone is praising the Celtics. Oh, great job in getting Kemba. You lost Kyrie, but it's okay because you got Walker. The Hornets overpaid for Rozier. The Celtics are going to be great. The Hornets are going to be awful, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward to now, Kemba Walker's a Knick. He only spent 2 seasons with the Celtics. Meanwhile, there's a real possibility that Rozier can spend 7 seasons with the Hornets. Make no mistake about it, everyone who praised the Celtics for getting Kemba Walker and criticized the Hornets for signing Rozier look really foolish right now. You can't tell me that the Celtics are better off now than they would be if Terry Rozier was still there. What would you rather have as your starting backcourt? Terry Rozier and Marcus Smart? Or Marcus Smart and Josh Richardson? I'd rather have Rozier and Smart. Rozier is a better player than Josh Richardson. There's nothing against Richardson. I like Richardson. Solid player. Role for him in the league. Not as good as Rozier. To me, that's another element of the Celtics having this great window to win and squandering it. I understand that they made 3 Eastern Conference Finals, but if you lose those series, who cares? You're gifted a dynasty. Making 3 Eastern Conference Finals in 4 years isn't enough. You've got to win an NBA Finals. I've said this before, I'll say it again. The Pearson-Garnett trade did not hurt the Nets as much as it could have. It set the Nets back a lot, there's no question. They had some lean years there. No question about it. But it would have been worse if the Celtics had won. Yes, they got 2 franchise cornerstones in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. But if all you have to show for that duo is 2 Eastern Conference Finals appearances, because realize Tatum wasn't there for the 17 Eastern Conference Finals, That's a bad look. And you can't tell me that the Celtics have a realistic road to winning in the near future. They have a great player in Tatum, and if you want to call Jaylen Brown great, I'll listen to you. But after that, it falls off a cliff. If Terry Rozier was still there, and the Celtics didn't make the big move in trading for Kyrie Irving and then replacing him with Kemba Walker, maybe, just maybe, the Celtics could have made an NBA Finals, and maybe they could have won it. Now the Celtics are left with two great players and a bunch of really good players. One of those really good players is Robert Williams, who the Celtics just signed to a 4-year extension worth $54 million. That's $13.5 million a year. Robert Williams is not worth $13.5 million a year. I like Robert Williams. I think he's a very good player. A very underrated center. Old school center. Scores in the low post. Solid rebounder. Great defender. But you don't give a guy who only put up 8 points last year $13.5 million. What was Robert Williams' best game last year? Game 1 of the first round of the playoffs against the Nets, where Williams had 11 points, 9 rebounds, and 9 blocks. What happened in that game? The Nets won 104-93. So even in Robert Williams' best game, the Celtics couldn't win. That should tell you something about Williams. Good player. Again, role for him in the league. Not worth $13.5 million. I mean, I'm not going to kill the Celtics for this. Because if he had hit free agency, maybe another team would have signed him to this. If you're desperate for a center, I could see it. I could see Williams getting this type of a contract. It's not the likeliest thing in the world, but it is possible. This is an overpay. There's no question about that. But it's a necessary overpay. I'm not going to kill the Celtics for it. I'm really not. I like Williams. I think he's a good player. Moving on now to a trade rumor, according to Chris Fedor of Cleveland.com. Kyle Anderson and Dylan Brooks can be had for the right price. I guess this is what happens when you have 18 guaranteed contracts. That's how many the Grizzlies have, counting the Beverly for Culver and Hernan Gomez trade. I'll say this, though. I wouldn't trade Dylan Brooks. There's got to be another way to flesh out the roster than to trade a guy who really epitomizes what the Grizzlies are all about. Remember the Andre Iguodala situation? It's okay if you don't. Andre Iguodala, once upon a time, was actually a Grizzly, but he never played a game for him. Iguodala did not want to be a Grizzly. He didn't think that was what was best for his career. So he sat out and forced a trade. Dylan Brooks publicly criticized Iguodala about that. He said, and I quote, "I can't wait till we find a way to trade him so we can play him and show him really what Memphis is about." How does that not make you happy as a Grizzlies fan. I mean, I'm not a Grizzlies fan. They're one of those teams that I don't care about. If they go 82-0, fantastic. If they go 0-82, fantastic. But even I love that. Brooks really likes being a Grizzly. He's a big part of that team. He was their second leading scorer last year. If you trade him, where are you getting that scoring? You traded Valanciunas. Who are you getting it from? Jaren Jackson Jr.? You better hope he stays healthy. No, I would not trade Dillon Brooks. Kyle Anderson, I could see. Anderson's not great. Firstly, he doesn't really fit the Grizzlies' age range. He's 27. That's not old by any stretch, but it's a little older than what the Grizzlies have primarily. He put up 12.4 points per game, 5.7 rebounds per game, and 3.6 assists per game. He shot 46.8% from the field and 36% from beyond the arc. He's not bad, but he's not great. He's expendable. I have no problem trading Anderson. I don't think it's the craziest idea to put Brandon Clark at the 3. I understand that he had a terrible shooting season last year. Shot just 26% from beyond the arc. But his rookie year, he shot 36% from beyond the arc. There's talent there. And the Grizzlies did run some lineups last year with Clark at the 3. I think he could do it. He could be backed up by either Zaire Williams or Jarrett Culver. Juan Hernan Gomez could be the backup power forward to Jaren Jackson Jr. I don't mind that. I don't mind that at all. If the Grizzlies trade Brooks, I'll be really upset. If they trade Anderson, I can live with it. Moving on now to a report surrounding my beloved Nets and the Golden State Warriors. According to Mike Singer of the Denver Post, both the Nets and Warriors have shown interest in Paul Millsap. Let me address this to Sean Marks. Please, 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 for the love of God, do not sign Paul Millsap. No, 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 no. Do not sign him. He is past his prime. He is not that good anymore. Were you watching the Nuggets last year? Because I was, and he was a shell of his former self. No, no, no. You have James Johnson. Why are you adding Millsap? You want to tell me that Paul Millsap is a better offensive player than James Johnson? I'll give you that. But you're not getting much from Millsap. He's not a great shooter. He's never going to put up 17 points a game again. He's not bad defensively still, but he's certainly never going to make another all-defensive team. No, I don't want Millsap. I don't like Millsap. I'd rather bring back LaMarcus Aldridge. If he's serious about returning, bring back Aldridge. Maybe keep a spot open for someone who gets bought out. Let Millsap go to the Warriors. I'd have no problem with that at all. The Warriors are insanely overrated. I understand that Steph Curry is the best shooter in NBA history. I'm not knocking Curry. But once you get past him, it's dicey. Andrew Wiggins is very good, but he's not great. I mean, I like Wiggins, I really do, but do you really want him being the second or third best player on your team? If your goal is to win a title, probably not. Klay Thompson hasn't played since 2019. You have no idea what he's going to do in his return. Draymond Green's overrated. James Wiseman's very good, but again, you don't want him being the second or third best player on a title winner. Here are the teams in just the Western Conference. Never mind teams like the Nets and Bucks. But just the Western Conference that I feel are better than the Warriors. The Nuggets are better. The Lakers are better. The Suns are better. And the Jazz are better. 2K said that they're coming out with super teams. If your team is designated a super team in my league, you get more of a crowd boost, it's easier to sign free agents. It's actually a welcome addition. There are 2 super teams to start out. One in the East, one in the West. The Nets are the team in the East. That's correct. No one can argue with that. In the West, it's the Warriors. The Warriors are a super team? What did I miss? You do know that the Warriors didn't make the playoffs last year, right? You do know that the year before that they only won 15 games, right? Okay. They made the NBA Finals in 2019. They lost to the Raptors. 2 years have passed since then. You do know that, right? They're not a super team anymore. Kevin Durant is a net. I don't think the super team designation is limited to just one team in the East and one team in the West. But to start out, it should have been the Nets in the East and the Lakers in the West. Those are the only 2 super teams in the NBA right now. There's a reason that 99% of people are predicting a Nets-Lakers NBA Finals. The Warriors are incredibly overrated. Moving on now to an interesting report from J. Michael of the Indianapolis Star. It says that Jeremy Lamb isn't expected to be a Pacer by the end of this coming season. So while at this very moment he is a Pacer, it's not going to stay that way through April. And I understand why the Pacers would want to move on from Lamb. He played 46 games in 1920. And last year he played in just 36 games. He hasn't set the world on fire. 10 points per game, 3.5 rebounds per game, 1.5 assists per game. He's not a bad player, but he's not great. His contract is going to expire after this coming season. So if you know that you're not going to re-sign him, sure, trade him. Get something for him. So you don't see him leave for nothing. I have no problem with that at all. I don't even know how big of a role he's going to have on the Pacers to start the season. Realize they drafted Chris Duarte and they still have TJ McConnell. How much is Lamb going to play? Probably not a lot. I think this is a situation that could come to a head sooner rather than later. Alright, now I'll give you some NFL Valk talk. Specifically on an interesting report from Todd Archer of ESPN. Teams want to trade for Connor McGovern of the Cowboys, not of the Jets. But the Cowboys don't want to trade him. And I gotta say, I understand why. I like McGovern. I like the McGovern that the Cowboys have more than the McGovern that the Jets have. Although the McGovern that the Jets have played well on Saturday. And I don't know much about George McGovern, except that he was Richard Nixon's opponent when Watergate was happening. There are too many McGoverns, but the Cowboys should hold on to theirs. He had a good, if I can call it, rookie season last year. He was drafted in 2019, but he got hurt. He tore a pec. He missed the whole season. Got into a bunch of games last year and had a 61.7 overall grade according to Pro Football Focus. That's not bad. Like, think about it. You miss your whole, what's supposed to be your rookie season. Then you come back, but you don't have the benefit of a normal training camp. You don't have the benefit of any preseason games. You're thrown into the fire quickly, and you hold your own. That's not bad. I like McGovern. The Cowboys are right to not want to trade him. Other teams are right to ask about him. He's probably not going to start over Connor Williams. So if another team has a quality offensive lineman on their bench, yeah, ask about him. But the Cowboys are right to say no. We all know what happened to Dak Prescott last year. They're not going to get rid of any good offensive linemen. They need to keep Prescott upright if they're going to win the NFC East. And I'll say this. I don't think it's impossible that they can win the NFC East. Also, let me say this. I will do an NFL season preview on September 9th. At 8:20 p.m. on that date, the NFL season's going to get underway with the Cowboys traveling to Tampa Bay to take on the Buccaneers. So that afternoon, I'll give you the season preview. I'll go division by division, telling you where I think each team is going to finish. I'll give you my playoff teams. I'll give you my Super Bowl pick. It's going to be really fun. That'll serve as the regular episode of the Jacob Valk Show on that date. On the night of the 10th, you're going to get my New York Jets season preview, where I'm going to go position by position, breaking down the team. I'll give you my final record prediction. That's going to be fun. There are a couple deaths in the sports world that I need to talk about. The first one is the death of Floyd Reese, who died on Saturday at the age of 73 from cancer. We don't know what type of cancer it was. Floyd Reese was the architect of those great Titans teams in the late 90s, early 2000s. That team, they came within a hair of winning the Super Bowl. Kevin Dyson getting tackled by Mike Jones just shy of the goal line. The architect of that team was Reese. Here's a guy who had probably the weirdest journey of any GM in sports history. He played at UCLA, was pretty good, didn't get drafted, spent a couple years in the CFL, didn't set the world on fire there, got into coaching, coached high school ball, college ball, then got into the NFL. He was defensive coordinator for 1 year for the 1984 Vikings. That was the Les Steckel year that did not go well. But that's as high as Reese got in coaching. 1 year as defensive coordinator for a team that went 3-13. A team that finished dead last in the NFL in terms of points given up per game. You may be asking yourself, why am I bringing this up? Well, you'd think that Reese would flame out of the NFL after that. He didn't. He latched on with the Houston Oilers as their linebackers coach. He was in that role from 1986 to 1989. That was when Jerry Glanville was their head coach. Then when Jack Party was hired, Reese got bumped up into the front office. What happened was Bud Adams, the founder of the Houston Oilers, who would obviously go on to become the Tennessee Titans, thought so highly of Reese that when Jerry Glanville offered Reese a job with him in Atlanta, when Glanville went to the Falcons, that Adams said, come up to the front office, you'll be assistant GM for a little bit, and when Mike Holovac, former Oilers GM and former Jets head coach for a game, he went 0-1, decides to move on from the post, you'll take over. Reese took Adams up on that offer, and in 1994, he became Oilers GM. What's that Beatles song, The Long and Winding Road? Doesn't get much more long and winding than the path that Reese took to become Titans GM. One of Reese's first moves was to fire Jack Party and to replace him with the former defensive coordinator for the Oilers, Jeff Fisher. Now, say what you want about Fisher, but there was a time in the late 90s, early 2000s, when he was a very well-respected head coach. Did he wear out his welcome as time went on? The answer is yes, but Reese got that hire right. I mean, it's kind of interesting. Fisher's first 4 full seasons as a head coach in the NFL were 1995 to 1998. Here are his records. 7-9, 8-8, 8-8, and 8-8. There were a lot of calls for Reese to move on from Fisher. He's never going to get them over the hump. If the Titans are going to ever make any noise, they've got to move on from Fisher. But Reese stuck with him because he knew that he was building a really good young core. He drafted Steve McNair. He drafted Eddie George. he drafted Javon Kersey. By 99, the Titans were ready to go on a big run. They went 13-3, but because the Jaguars went 14-2, the Titans were a wildcard team. They had to go through the Bills if they wanted to advance in the playoffs. Obviously, the Titans advanced on the Music City Miracle. If you haven't seen the clip yet, search it out on YouTube. Watching it there is better than any description that I could possibly give you. Then the Titans beat the Colts in Peyton Manning's first playoff game. They got a little bit of revenge on the Jaguars by destroying them 33-14 in the AFC Championship game. Then the Mike Jones tackle on Kevin Dyson happened in Super Bowl 34. But give Reese credit. He kept the Titans' core intact, even though there were a lot of calls for him to blow things up. Unfortunately for the Titans, that was Reese's high watermark as their GM. The Titans went 13-3 the year after, but got upset by the Ravens 24-10 in the divisional round. The year after that, they went 7-9. They missed the playoffs. They got a little bit of revenge in 2002. They went 11-5. They won the AFC South. They beat the Steelers in the divisional round 34-31. Joe Nedney kicked a 26-yard game-winning field goal in overtime. But then the Titans got destroyed by the Raiders 41-24. The year after that, the Titans went 12-4. They beat the Ravens 20-17 on a 46-yard Gary Anderson field goal with less than 30 seconds left in regulation. Then they went up against the Patriots, but they lost 17-14. After that, Reese clashed with Adams and Fisher. He resigned as Titans GM after the 2006 season. But Reese still has the most wins by a GM in the history of the Tennessee Titans franchise. He has 111 wins. The second death is of Mr. Ranger, Gilbert, who died yesterday at the age of 80. Gilbert is probably the best Ranger to ever put on a pair of skates. On my Rangers Mount Rushmore, I don't remember if I had Gilbert at 1. I think I did. I'm sure I did. I just don't remember it. I should have. Let's put it that way. No one personified what it meant to be the leader of a New York team better than Gilbert. Here's a guy who never got into trouble, always said the right thing, even when his teams weren't making a lot of noise. Gilbert never complained. He handled New York as well as anyone has ever handled New York. His rookie season was 62-63, and he played in every game that year. He put up 31 points. So you're thinking, okay, maybe this guy will be decent. Definitely not great, though. The year after that, Gilbert had 64 points in 70 games. The year after that, he put up 61 points in 70 games. Tragically, his career almost ended during the following season. When he was playing in junior hockey, Gilbert suffered a nasty fall. He tripped over some garbage on the ice. He fell back into the boards. He broke a vertebra in his back. He was temporarily paralyzed. The surgery that followed didn't go as planned. His leg hemorrhaged. It was almost amputated. Seemingly, he recovered, but in 66, he needed a second spinal fusion operation, missed half the season. You wonder, is he ever gonna be the player that he was again? Yes, he would. Gilbert put up 46 points in 64 games in the 66-67 season. He finished 4th in Lady Byng trophy voting and 7th in Hart Trophy voting. The year after that, Emile Francis made one of the smartest decisions he possibly could. Gilbert was a right winger. Francis moved Jean Rattel to being Gilbert's center and Vic Hadfield to being on the other side of Ren. That line would become immortalized as the gag line, the goal a game line. That line absolutely dominated in the NHL. Unfortunately for the Rangers, they were really never able to get over the hump. Gilbert only played in one Stanley Cup final. It was with the gag line intact. It was 1972. The Rangers beat the Canadiens in 6 games in the quarterfinals, swept the Blackhawks in the semifinals, then went up against the Bruins in the Stanley Cup finals, where they'd lose in 6 games. And that was it. That was the only Stanley Cup that Gilbert played in. The Rangers have had some great players in their history. Gilbert, Ed Jockeman, Harry Howell, Andy Bathgate, even Henrik Lundqvist, who just retired. None of those guys won a Stanley Cup with the Rangers. It truly is one of the biggest travesties in NHL history that the Rangers have had all these great players, but they went from 1940 to 1994 without winning a Stanley Cup. In fact, 94 is the last cup they've won. It's really sad. There are certain players that deserve Stanley Cups. Gilbert was definitely one of them. He retired after the 77-78 season. He got into a contract dispute with Rangers GM John Ferguson. Not long after that, his number 7 was retired by the Rangers, the first number they ever retired. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1982. He was an 8-time All-Star. He won the Bill Masterton Trophy in 1976. holds the Rangers' record for most goals and points in a career. He is the best Ranger ever. May Floyd Reese and Gilbert both rest in peace. New York Yankees show comes your way tonight. Regular episodes of the Jacob Valk Show come your way every weekday afternoon. Until next time, I'm Jacob Valk, and always remember, if you disagree with me, you're wrong.